when you commit yourself to a group or a religion or a gang or a political party or whatever your thing is, where you congregate with people like-minded as yourself, you sacrifice. You got to make sure you don't sacrifice your individuality.
Well, Kyle, thank you so much for joining me on Growing Up Fundie. I'm really excited to have you here today. So 2 years ago, you reached out to me on Facebook and we were talking about getting you on an episode. And I don't know what happened. I don't know where I went. I don't know why that didn't go anywhere, but I'm so glad that you reached out to me again.
Yeah, I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, I'm glad to have you here because I was enjoying the conversation. I don't remember where I went or what I did. It was before I got hit by a car, so I can't even use that as an excuse.
There you go. Yeah.
But you're here, and I'm glad to have you. So tell us a little bit about yourself. Who are you? What do you do? What are you all about?
So my wife and I, we moved here. We're originally from Alabama, from Tuscaloosa, and we moved to Georgia for a few years. Now we live in Murfreesboro, Tennessee. So we love it. We get to go into. There's just so much to do.
I've heard nothing but great things.
We go to Nashville and stuff like that. We'll go to the comedy clubs and all that good stuff like we talked about earlier. But yeah, I work for a company. I'm a contractor. I work for a company that works for Lowe's. And so doing that right now. And that's about all I got going on. I was raised, like I was telling you earlier, Baptist, Pentecostal.
And so, though, if I remember correctly, and correct me if I'm wrong, you were originally introduced to Baptist faith, Baptist teachings by your grandmother for the first 12 or so years of your life. And then after that, you went to your dad's church, which was a Pentecostal church, right?
Yeah. So a little bit of difference there.
Yeah, there is. And I'm fascinated. When I read the Pentecostal, I was like, so for anybody who maybe isn't familiar with one of the two of them or the difference between the two, what would you say in your mind stuck out as the biggest difference between going from the Baptist church and your thoughts and feelings there to the Pentecostal church?
The Baptist church pretty much just feels, especially in the South, pretty much just like we're going to go through our week and do what we do. And, and then Sunday comes and show up and, hey, how's everybody doing? Listen to the preacher for an hour, and the whole service lasts for an hour. And if it's 5 minutes over, they're like, hey, let's go. Let's wrap it up.
Yeah.
Pentecostal church, you're there all day long. And I used to be in a one of the the ministries, because if you go to a Pentecostal church long enough, you have to be in the ministry at some point.
Yeah.
And so I'd be at church at 7:30 on Sunday morning and leave at 2.
Jeez.
And it was like, Jesus Christ, I can't keep doing this, man. This is killing me.
Yeah.
But basically, Pentecostals take it, the experience of church and God and everything, they take it, I don't know if it's way more serious, but it's a lot more time dedicated to it.
Yeah.
I'll tell people, there's a quota for being in church. I reached it 20.
You built up all your credits that you need for your lifetime.
I'm retired.
And now Pentecostal, they do a lot of speaking in tongues, right? And they do a lot of the charismatic singing, dancing, jumping up and down kind of activity in their services. And when you were first introduced to that as a young teenager, what did you think? Do you remember anything about your first couple experiences there?
I hated it. I really did. I thought it was crazy. I thought it was weird. My dad got remarried and I was 11, and my stepmom one night was just like, let's go to this church. And it was a Wednesday night. So we go, and people are doing their thing, and it's, loud, and the preacher's going off and all this stuff. And I know my dad, I was like, there's no way. In my head, I was like, there's no way in hell my dad's coming back to this.
Yeah.
But he did, and we ended up staying for years and years and years.
Wow.
And, when you're young, when you're that young, it's pretty much like, well, I guess this is what we do now. We just go and so I'm the kind of person, I'm either all the way in or I'm all the way out. Yes. And so I'm like, well, might as well, get into this thing. So I just jumped in and got into the youth ministry and all that good stuff, and met people and doing that, which, I still talk to a couple of people even now, and I've been away from the church for 15 more years.
Yeah. And so at a certain point, you even became like the youth leadership, right? Did I read that correctly?
Not the pastor or anything like that. I would help out. I would, preach from time to time when the youth pastor had to go out and so do stuff like that.
Do you remember what changed for you in terms of like, this is crazy to, okay, I'll do more of it? Was it more like out of convenience because you were already going, or did something really tug at your heartstrings and you're like, I believe this?
Well, it got to a point of that, and like when I was 11, 12, I was like, I don't do this. I was playing baseball. I already had friends outside the church and all that stuff. And then I got, more and more into it and started kind of, working my way away from everything else to be at this. Cause I was like, well, this is good. This is God, and I've heard about God and Jesus my whole life. So, I feel like I'm doing the right thing. But it just got to a point where it was just all the time. And then just certain things that I was seeing and hearing I didn't like for about 2 years straight, I was under the youth pastor. Who's a great guy. I still talk to him from time to time now. But, and I was, kind of his right-hand man at one point.
Interesting.
And I told him one day, I said, man, I'm just getting burned out. I said, I'm here. I said, I think I'm going to sit out for a little bit, and I'm going to go into, what they call big church,
Yeah.
Said, I'm going to go into the big church and hang for a while. And he kind of looked at me, and then he said, okay, man, that's up to you. He said, but you need to be a little bit more faithful. And I'm thinking, Jesus Christ, I've been, nonstop for 2 years here, and I get, you need to be more faithful. So,
but like, what do you think? So when people say things like that, I always wonder, do you think they mean it, or do you think they know they're supposed to say it? What do you think was the point there?
I think what he meant it for was like, I kind of like the way this is set up and it's going well. And like, we're doing good things. I don't want to, I don't want you to leave. I think it's a little bit of it.
Don't ruin this for me.
Yeah. Well, it was kind of like that, I felt, but it just came out of nowhere. And I was just like, what are you talking about? I asked him, I was like, what are you talking about? I've been here for 2 years. I've been with you for 2 years. And I said, I'm not leaving forever. I said, I'm just going to take a few weeks to kind of, where I don't have to be in charge of anything and look after things and all that.
But see, that's the devil creeping in. That's the devil. That's what they'll try to tell you. Now, I don't know if this was your experience, but when I was a kid growing up in church, people ask me all the time now that I'm just like a straight up like internet atheist. They're like, what where's your experience growing up? And I remember it was like 50% belief, but then it was also like 50% grown-ups are very proud of me when I say and do certain things. So I'm going to do those things to make them proud of me. Like I've noticed that grown-ups really like it when I say like, I'm going to pray about this. Like I'm going to pray about my grades. Right. And so do you remember having any experience like that? Was it genuine for you? Was any of it performative? Did you feel like you had to do anything or that you wanted to do it? What was like your general vibe that you remember?
Well, as far as the whole, because, growing up in it, there's always, you've got, everybody's kind of photocopied the same over, especially if you're in ministry, right? So like all the youth pastors, I could see a youth pastor in Walmart and not know who he is. I'm like, that's a fucking youth pastor. That guy's a preacher, and that's just something you recognize when you've been in it. And I just got to a point, I was like, is this what I'm doing? Like, this is me, and I'm just going to just be this person that I really, over a period of time, I started to not like who I was. And I'm like, am I doing this? Why am I doing this? Because I've never been the type that's like, I want to have the microphone and I want to be the center of attention or anything like that. So if that's what it's turning into, then to me, that's always been gross. I just never liked that.
Yeah. What was it that you started to not like about yourself?
Well, I just noticed that the way that I would interact with people and the way that people would interact with me, it wasn't like a real experience.
Right.
Like,
disingenuous.
Yeah. I mean, it's got all the like qualities of I'm right here and I'm talking to you.
The trappings.
But there's really just nothing behind the eyes of like, I don't really care.
Yeah.
I saw a guy one day when I left the church. I came back and he was like, "Man, I hadn't seen you in forever. Hey, we need to catch up, man." I was like, "Well, yeah, let me give you my number." And he goes, and I still laugh about it to this day. He goes, "Yeah, man, I'll get it after I got to run and teach Sunday school real quick, but I'll get it out." All right, man. Do you think? You're like, it's a phone number. I'm giving you a phone number.
That's
I was just like, wow.
That's funny. It's like those exchanges you have when you run into somebody at Walmart and you're both standing there and you both know you don't want to stand there very long and you both know this is just platitudes, but for whatever reason you're still both like, "Oh, how's it? Oh, good. Oh, thanks. Well, great to see you."
Yeah.
Very fake.
Yeah.
Did you ever, like, at what point, because now for anybody listening, you identify as an agnostic for the most part.
Yeah.
What was it that took you from I'm burnt out right now to maybe I don't even believe any of this?
So I had preached for a while and did all that. And I kind of that was where it kind of started of like, I just don't really like this anymore. I don't feel like I'm being the person I should be. I was dating someone and we broke up and that was really hard at the time. And so just basically for the sake of, I need to get out of here for just a little while to kind of compose myself and get out. And then once you're out of something and you can kind of see it from a distance, you're like, oh yeah, that is kind of, and then you start digging a little bit to be like, well, do I really believe that? Or am I just saying I believe that and not really having? That's the biggest problem with me as far as people that are religious, and I know people say religion and spirituality and all that, but for me, religion is just a dirty thing. Religion in and of itself is just, I don't want to have any part of it. I don't want to, I see these preachers on TV that are millions and millions of dollars and they're asking for, I was actually talking to a buddy of mine today and I said, if the church always, if thoughts and prayers and all that are so powerful, then why are you asking for my money all the time? Let's pray for the building.
That's a fair question.
You know what I mean? Like, I'm not trying to be an asshole about it, but when you ask people, they're like, "Oh, don't give me this covered over, Band-Aid of an answer. Like, if you believe it, let me know why you believe it." Yeah. And it just got to a point I couldn't tell people why I believed it anymore. And I just knew anything else wouldn't be right.
Do you remember any specific thing or lesson that made you like really step back and just be like, whoa, that is not something that I stand for anymore, or I can't believe I used to think this, or any like example of just kind of where life like threw in your face the difference between who you were versus who you are now?
I can't say one specific thing turned that. And the church that I went to, it wasn't anything like, because everything changes over time, and just the church that I had started out at was not the church that I ended up at.
Right.
When I left, it was one of these where it's like, I'm not big on like calling attention to in a weird way. Like people that have to just be the center of attention is kind of, that's fine, but that's just not me. And it's kind of, and I'm judgmental about a lot of stuff too when I see it. And so you're sitting in a service and the service is going on. And then here comes the preacher from some room and there's a guy walking beside, holding his Bible. And there's, security with headsets on. He's like, okay, man, like, what is this? What are you doing? Yeah. You can't carry your Bible to your seat. Like, what's going on? And just a lot of weird. And there's a pastor for every member, it seemed like. And he's just like, like if you can, Bill Burr's got a great thing of just like, it's just some guy. Like, why could he talk to God and I can't? It's just another dude.
right.
not some powerful dude. It's just a guy.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that makes sense. I got to go through you to get to God, it seems like.
I mean, and that's a great question too. I feel like a lot of times deconstruction from faith, away from faith, is just a series of really good questions that people begin to ask themselves. Like, why is it that one guy can talk to God and nobody else can? How does he know he's talking to God? How come he can't prove it, but if I ask him to prove it, that's bad? How come if God's real, all this bad stuff keeps happening? How come every time I pray, and it's just question after question that can't really be answered in a reasonable way or can't be answered in a satisfactory way because there is no really good answer other than maybe this isn't true or maybe it's not real. Maybe, and it's interesting to me how many millions of people would rather believe that there's, a God in heaven who watches everyone and everything and knows everyone and knows everything. And they would rather believe that than maybe it just doesn't exist. Maybe that's why nobody's ever
It's comfort. It is. A lot of it's comfort. And I realize that. And and like you were talking about the question, but the question, so when you're a kid and you're asking about how tall was Goliath? Jesus Christ, he was 10 feet tall. And now you're like, bullshit, he went 10 feet. Never been a 10-foot tall man. I've never seen one. So, but the questions that as you keep asking them as you get older, they tend to be the same thing. Like if you had never heard about God or Jesus or anything in the Bible until you're 21, 22, and then it was presented, it's like, that's not, I'm not going to believe that, and so that's kind of the reason I feel like they put it into you when you're younger, because I don't know if you heard that, we're under I don't know if it's tornado warning, there's thunder going on, so
I forgot to warn the audience. We both have tornado warnings going on in our area, so Kyle, at any point, if you need to duck and cover at any point, we can do a part 2.
No, I'm going down. I'm going down with the. I'm not stopping. I'm going down with the tornado if it comes through.
Yep. So, I'd say I'll see you in heaven, but I don't think either one of us are going there.
But the questions keep coming in the same childlike answers are given, and you're like, I'm 40 now. I can't. You got to give me something with substance in it.
Right. And it's also very interesting, at least in my experience, one of the things that really tipped me off to kind of begin deconstructing was in every other facet of my life, nobody wanted to hear anything from me unless I had facts, evidence, sources, proof, research, this, that, the other, until it came to eternal salvation. And then everyone was like, don't question it. That's the devil. Don't think too much about it.
Faith, you can't question it.
Yeah. And that to me just didn't make any sense, that the exact same people who preached how important it is to know what you're talking about and not to just blindly believe what you read on the internet wanted me to blindly believe what I read in the Bible.
Yeah, that's a big problem. That's a huge issue too, that you just look, if you really you're spending your whole life, your life is based around this.
Yes.
And I ask you a simple question and it's you can't, and I had this, a girl that I used to work with, she was really nice and everything. She was always asking me about church and want to go to church and everything. And finally I was like, look, I said, I don't really believe in all of that. I said, I'm not saying that you couldn't, but I said, but here's my biggest issue. I said, God is everywhere. God's everywhere. God sees everything. I said, let me ask you this. I said, if you got a little boy, she just had a son. I said, if your little boy was sick, nothing could be done. No doctor, no nothing. And I was the only one that could heal your kid. And you came to me and you cried and you begged and you pleaded. And not only did I not heal your son, but I watched as he suffered the whole time. And then the people that represent me will tell you things like, well, God, it's all, it works in mysterious ways. What if I told you that I just watched your son die and I just work in mysterious ways? That doesn't cut it. That's just, it just doesn't add up. And if it doesn't, makes sense, then it's hard for me to wrap my mind around it.
Yeah. Or the other one that gets me is it's all part of God's plan. Yeah. And you're like, well, that's a bullshit plan then, because I hate it and it doesn't work for me.
Well, that's the thing too about prayer. They'll go, you got to pray. Well, if God knows everything that's going to happen, what have I got to? Where do I fit in the picture here?
Right.
You know, because if it's the book that's already been written beginning to end, then what am I going? How am I going to change the middle?
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, it just, I don't know.
Especially when he supposedly already knows how that ends up. It's like, why not just save us both the trouble and like tell me what I'm supposed to do and how I'm supposed to do it if you already know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's the biggest thing. And again, I'm not trying to be, everybody's got their thing. And to me, and I drive my wife crazy. To me, everything is stupid. And I've got my stupid. You know what I mean? I watch when I get off of here, I'm gonna go down and watch NBA playoffs. I'm gonna watch people play basketball that don't know I exist.
Yeah.
And that's my stupid. So I completely get it. My opinion on what people do is of no consequence. Shouldn't be.
Right. Who's your favorite team?
I don't have. I just watch.
You just watch.
Yeah, I watch. I'm either watching basketball or I'm watching like stand-up comedy clips and interviews, and just I bore people to death with. Hey, did you hear that Norm Macdonald had a bid on? And they're like, Jesus. Yeah. Okay.
Jesus. Well, I was going to say, if you ever want to find people who will talk about that all day long, just go back to Third Coast on a Monday night and you'll be able to talk to anybody who wants to. Yeah. So at what point did you feel comfortable using the word agnostic? Was there any point where you were like, that's scary, I can't be an agnostic?
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't like an overnight thing where I just washed my hands of it, because it's like was ingrained. It was like, it's in you. It's taught to you, and anything that you go against for a while is going to seem foreign. And so it would be to a point where I don't know if I really believe it. And then it got all the way to the point where there's no God, and if it is, I don't care anyway, and all this. But now I'm just at this peaceful type state of like, if there is, there is. I try to be as good as I can. I treat people with respect. I'm not an asshole. I'm not out here trying to take over the world. Right. If there is a heaven, man, I hope I get in. That'd be nice. But, I don't know.
Unless it's all that angel choir singing shit, and then I don't want any of it. That sounds boring.
Yeah.
I hated church choir growing up. It doesn't sound fun for eternity.
Yeah.
So how would you say your life has improved, if at all, since leaving the faith and considering yourself agnostic? Has there been anything where you're like, man, this is better, or this feels more natural, this feels like me?
Yeah, I don't go through like guilt of things that I do now that I don't feel like I should have felt guilty about to begin with. Like, I know a big thing in society now is words and how to use them and what offends people and all this. And everybody's got their, and I'm not trying to start any, but everybody's got their own thing. I don't care. You can say whatever you want to say. I feel like that's if you have nothing else, you should be able to speak words out of your mouth without repercussion of like losing your job, depending on what you say and all that. But
within reason.
I mean, you don't want to go out there and just cuss customers out and think you're probably not going to be able to stay very long. But it's just one of those things where, I say the things I say and I don't feel bad. Like if I cuss, I don't feel bad about it. It's just a word. It's just something I say, and just moving. And that's a small thing, but just moving away from like the guilt of just being a human being really is what, I like better.
Yeah. Yeah. So. And we talked a little bit before we were on the record about how after leaving the faith, you feel like you're actually like nicer to people and you care more about people. And let me know if I'm like phrasing this incorrectly, but tell me a little bit about that. Like, how do you feel you have improved as a person in your mind since then?
So I enjoy meeting individuals. Like I enjoy like what we're doing. I enjoy talking to you.
Yeah.
People as a whole, I kind of feel, like when you see everything going on, it's like a a pity of like, we're so smart, we're so great, but we're also the biggest pieces of shit ever been created. Like, we could be so great, but we hate each other for silly reasons and things that nobody cares about really, and we're just trying to jab at each other. And I wish people were better, but like I say, being around a group of people, a lot of people at one time, but as individuals, when you get people by themselves and you talk to them, a lot of us, we're all pretty much alike, depending on certain characteristics, things, even if we're brought up differently, we're still people that have the same emotions and feelings, and they just get let out in different ways. Yeah. And other than that, when I was in church, I never would have cared. The only thing I cared about were the people that would come in. It's like, oh, you're here to hear something, so let's give you what. But I never really took it out of the church and really cared about other people or anything.
Interesting.
Like that, the way I do now.
So, like, basically what you're saying is all the stuff that you preached about how to, like, talk to people, treat people in the church, things like that, didn't really carry over into your outside of church life?
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't mean to people or rude or anything like that. It was just I didn't, I was just another person that said that they were a Christian.
Yeah.
When I look at people that I don't like preachers, but if you're a preacher and you're actually doing something to help people, then that's fine. That's fine. If you're really trying to do what you say you're doing, then I have no problem with you. But if you're out here, telling people that God wants them to give $1,000 to heal their cancer, and then they die, then you're an asshole. Like, there's no way.
Right.
The man of God or not, it's just not right to do that.
Right. And has anything surprised you about yourself since you've left the faith, or since you've been considering yourself an agnostic?
Oh, not really surprising. I am surprised at the lack of talking to certain people that I grew up with in the church as I've left. That was kind of surprising.
Yeah.
Because you're like, yeah, these are my people, these are my friends, and I get it. It's it is what it is, but it's one of those things too where it's like I cut myself off. I wasn't cut off, but also too, I gotta reach out to other people and that I went to church with and hung out with and preached with and did ministry and all that, and it's just not it's just not there anymore, those relationships.
Yeah. So. Yeah. It makes you realize, like, you didn't have nearly as many things in common as you thought. It was kind of the one thing. Yeah.
Right.
It is very interesting. And on that note, or in that lane, I suppose, has leaving the church impacted your personal relationships in a pretty big way, or small, or a little bit of 50-50?
Not really. I mean, the only relationships I have now, since my wife and I live in Tennessee and we don't know anybody here. So the only relationships that I have are really just my wife and my mom. I still talk to my brother, and he was kind of raised in the church too until he was he's 14 years younger than me. So he kind of got out before I did, younger than I did. But as far as relationships, not really. My wife, she believes in God. We don't go to church or anything like that, but she believes in God, and that's fine. I don't own the religion, or lack of religion in our relationship. I think that's fine. That's great.
Yeah.
And she lets me be me and work through my stuff, and that's just basically how our relationship is.
Do you guys
kind of broke my mom's heart?
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, I feel like revealing to your parents, I feel like, is a tough part, because they automatically assume that means they did something wrong or something.
Yeah. Yeah. And I told her, I mean, she knows because my dad passed a few years ago, and I've always been pretty much a mama's boy. And so we talk about everything. And I just told her, I was like, look, I said, it's just hard for me to get into this thing anymore, like church, because actually when I graduated high school, I moved to North Carolina to do Bible college for 1 semester for 4 months. I moved,
really,
and I did that, and that was kind of I shouldn't have done that.
Yeah, what was that like? I'm surprised this is just now coming out. What was that?
I know,
like?
I jumped all the way around it, but yeah. So I go, and so basically what it was an evangelist, traveling preacher, would the church I was going to, his dad was our pastor, and so the natural progression would be to go from this church to you go to this Bible college and travel with this guy and do it, and it wasn't a great wasn't a great experience.
Was it like a real school?
Really
do you
weird.
think? Or
It was a college. Yeah, it was a Bible college, but also too, it was one of those things where you worked for the guy, and you would travel and do all that. And you lived with a family or a person in that town's church or where they were doing it. You would just live with someone that would take you in for 4 months and let you stay at their house. And I don't know how I got so lucky, but I got a really, really old, senile lady that was like 45 minutes away. And it was just so bad. I was late the first day to the office because my alarm didn't go off. And I had also asked her if she would wake me up. I said, I've got to get to the office. Tomorrow's the first day. Well, the first day happened to fall on like some half-ass holiday, like a president's birthday or something. And she's like, oh, I didn't wake you up because it's, Abraham Lincoln's birthday. And I'm what are you talking about? I get a speeding ticket on the way there. I show up late, and like that's the worst first impression anybody could ever make. So I show up late to the meeting, and everybody looks at me, and I'm like, hey, I got a ticket, and I'm late, and and all this. But it was kind of like a hierarchy of people, and just a couple of the guys there, they just weren't. Everybody was on a power trip, like churches is kind of like, I'm not this guy, but I'm this guy. But you're this guy. So I can say, I remember I was exhausted, and we were on a trip, like in a van going to a church, and they were like, pray for the city, and when you do all that while we're driving and everything, and people are praying. Well, I doze off, and this guy, like the guy gets mad at me. He's like, wake up, pray. I'm like, damn, man, like I'm not doing it on purpose. I'm tired. I'm exhausted. I've been traveling all night,
Yeah.
And it was just stuff like that where I'm just not big on people doing it. Like, I'm a guy just like you're a guy, dude. Leave me alone.
I feel like every story is, here's how it was supposed to go. Here's how it went. And I don't know why everybody was so mad. like that's like the summary of like all these stories.
I did not have a good time there. It wasn't.
And was it like, did you have a bad time because of like the laborious aspect, or because also maybe at that point you were questioning whether or not it even mattered to begin with?
At that point, I wasn't questioning, but it was an eye-opening experience to like really how ministry kind of really is. It's a business.
It is.
It is a business. Make no mistake about it. And it's you see all the, and it's just it just wasn't my fit. Like I like to look around, and I'm silly, but I'm not irreverent, or I wasn't then, but I'm just silly and like to joke around stuff. And the guy, the preacher, the pastor that I was working for was getting ready to go on stage. And there was like a lot of people, a lot of kids. And I was like, Jesus Christ, he must be like, I don't know how he doesn't get nervous. And he hands me his jacket, and I go to take the jacket, taking it, and fix to get it. And I said, just because it was a nice jacket. And I told him right before he went on, I was like, just to let you know, I'm going to put this jacket on, see how it looks on me. Kind of like, ha, the levity to the situation. And dude, with the meanest look on his face, he goes, "Don't ever make jokes when I'm getting." And I was like, "Okay, all right,
wow,
all right, Billy Graham, go do your thing, man." And it's just stuff like that. That really shit bothers me when people do that.
Yeah, it's like, okay, Joel Osteen, sure thing.
I know, and it's like, dude, come on.
That's wild.
Whether I say that to you or not, you should have your stuff ready. Like, you were a comic. Did you ever leave me alone? I'm trying to think about this. You got your act. You've done your act. And
the plebeians never spoke to me, so I don't know what that's like because they didn't have the audacity. I'm just kidding.
Is that right?
Yeah, I'm just kidding. Yeah, no. So this is like fascinating because meeting you now, you don't seem like somebody who would have ever had time for any of that stuff. Like, you seem like somebody kind of like how you described, like, everything's stupid. Like, you seem like somebody who just doesn't, like, in the best way, just doesn't care. It's just like, hey, do your thing. I don't care. Like, just don't bother me with it. Don't hurt anybody. And so it's interesting. And I think it's also important for people listening to this to understand that even people like that, even people who consider themselves like nonchalant, who really don't get bothered by other people, who really don't get bothered by words, can still find themselves in like a religious situation or like a church where they still feel like there's something they need to do to fit in, or there's something they need to do to do better or to be better at being a Christian or to be more faithful.
Yeah.
And I think it's also really important for people to see that, like, there's life after that too. Once you've left, you seem like you're living a pretty good life over there, right? Like, you seem like you're doing great.
Yeah, I mean, look, I deal with things just like everybody does.
Yeah.
I deal with, I'll deal with depression from time to time, but what it is, it's like, well, I need to figure it out for me. I need to figure out how to get through it. And I just don't have that crutch anymore of, God, I'm putting it in your hands. I'm going to let you take care of it. And there's a part of me that does get a little envious of people that can do that.
Yes. 100%.
Because once you're not able to do that anymore and you realize it, it does get scary in the world, because you kind of think there's a lot of bad shit going on, and maybe we're all just in this thing alone. To me, there's nothing in the world that's that serious, that's that important.
Right.
We all die at the end of this thing.
Right.
Like, let's figure out how to get through it without like killing each other and ramming it down everybody's throat and things like that. So it's just one of the best quotes I've ever heard was, this guy was asked, if heaven exists, if God exists, what would you like to hear him say when you meet him? And this answer blew me away. He goes, I would like for God to tell me I'm sorry for my followers. And it makes a lot of sense, like, maybe God's not the, maybe God, maybe there is a God, maybe he does, but the people that represent him are assholes from time to time, so right? That's the biggest, it may not be the team that you don't like, it may just be the fans.
Right.
And so I think about that from time to time. So I'm always still in it. I wish I could be the kind of person, because I see people that are either 100%, they're like, God exists, I know it for sure, and they seem very content. And then I'll see atheists that are like, I know for sure that there's nothing. When you die, and it's over. I'm envious of both sides, because I still struggle from time to time of like, maybe there is. Maybe when you open that door, oh, yeah, you didn't do good,
Right?
And I'm just like, oh, Jesus Christ.
Yeah, like I was telling you before we went on the record, like, I consider myself just about as atheist as it gets, right? Like, that's like my whole brand. Yeah. And even when there's like turbulence on a plane, even my brain goes, uh-oh, what if you were wrong the whole time? Like, uh-oh. Yeah.
I want anybody to see it, so God, look, just between you and me, if you're there,
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I pray.
You help me out a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I'm always like, I'm sorry about the podcast. And the other podcast and the interview that I did where I said, so that being said, if you could give advice, maybe somebody's watching this and they're like, man, I really see myself in that guy. Like everything about him reminds me of me, but I don't know how to get to that point where I can call myself agnostic, where I can admit that I don't believe. What advice would you give to people who hope to be where you are one day?
Well, that's the thing. I don't know if you really want to be where because my mind just goes constantly, like always thinking about either my mortality or this or that. And it's just don't push it aside. Like if you have a question or if you have a doubt about something, if you're still in the faith or in the church and you have a question, don't let anybody be like, well, you need to worry about that. Because if it's something important to you, you finding out may help you become a better person by the time you are 40.
Yeah.
And maybe you'll have a better grip on, well, maybe I was looking at it this way when I should have been looking at it that way. Or maybe I can start seeing things in other people that maybe, don't hold people in the church or anywhere else. Like what I do, I don't have any heroes. I'm a fan of people. I like celebrities and I like movies and music and comics and all that, but I don't have any heroes. I'm not married to any ideas. I have, certain things that are what they are in my life. Like I'm a hard worker. I'm gonna, love my wife and I'm gonna be faithful to her and I'm gonna do all this. But other ideas of like, if somebody can come up with a compelling argument for God, yeah, of course I'll listen. Sure.
Yeah.
Somebody had said one time, what if there was evidence of God? Would you believe? And I'm like, well, of course.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'd be stupid not to if there's evidence, that's all.
Yeah.
Don't get closed off, and married to your ideas.
Yeah. People are always surprised by that answer. I get that too. And they're like, well, what if you woke up tomorrow and science said that God was real? I'd be like, well, I'd have questions, but I'd believe it if science said,
And that's the thing. And you don't want to be the kind of person that's like, I believe this and this is what I believe. And no matter what, I feel like when people hitch their wagon to a certain thing, you're going to at some point have to answer for that thing. Like, for instance, the people that, I'm not a political person, but you got people that love Trump. You got people that love Biden. You got people okay, well, that's fine. But at some point, somebody's going to be like, well, what do you think when he said this?
Yes.
And you have to be the kind of person to be like, you know what, that was kind of fucked up what he said. I don't know why he said that, but just blind anything is not good. Blind patriotism, blind, to me, this is not good. You got to be open to, you got to be open to things and then have that right to be like, that's stupid. I don't believe that.
Yeah. And also be open to conversations with the people who have hitched their wagon to an idea. So something people like to bring up to me is when I say that I voted for Biden, not for Trump, they say, well, what if Biden got caught with illegal documents at his house? And I say, send him to jail. Bye.
Yeah. I mean, anybody that, you got to know who you are.
Yeah.
Not who you want to follow.
Right.
And if and not everybody's perfect, no. I can see why people like the internet can make you fall in love or hate anybody. You know what I'm saying? Like, you just have to know and not be swayed one way or the other. I'm liberal about some things. I'm conservative about some things. And you just have to be flexible.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. If you go on the internet looking for a specific opinion, you'll find it. If you're like, this is my thing, and whether it's religious, whether it's political, whether it's economic, if you're like, I never want to change my mind and I want to find evidence to support what I think, or I want to find websites or blogs, you'll find it. No matter how unhinged the idea is, you'll find pages and pages and pages of stuff from other people telling you that it's fine, that you're totally fine. You're right. And so I think people struggle sometimes to separate the truth or the direction they should go with the just endless is inundation a word? I'm going to say it is inundation of information and thoughts and opinions. And just as easily as you can find exactly what you're looking for, you can find out that you're the biggest piece of shit and you're wrong.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you see what I'm saying? Like,
that's the thing too. And you got to be able to say that. But like I was saying before, individuals are different than people.
Right.
You know, when you commit yourself to a group or a religion or a gang or a political party or whatever your thing is, where you congregate with people like-minded as yourself, you sacrifice. You got to make sure you don't sacrifice your individuality. Right. Like, my wife is my wife, but she still, has a job that she works for. She's still, she's a daughter. She's this, she's that. You know what I mean? Like, you have to be open to everything and also question everything and see what fits for you. People, they vote for Biden because it's in their interest. It's fine. Same people do the same thing for Trump. But when you get like a group mentality of people that's like, this side is stupid, this side is stupid, and then you get people like myself that are like, both of y'all are stupid. That's the thing that I've found out more about myself, is that I like individuals more than I like just groups of people that basically an echo chamber where it's like, and that's the thing about people, is like, when we see things, when we look up things and we're wrong, that's a point where we can go, oh, I didn't, I was wrong. Yeah. But a lot of us are like, fuck that. That's not the right thing. Let me look at something else.
Yeah.
And then you find something that affirms what you want to hear, and then you go with it. You're like, that's not the way to do it.
Yes.
It hurts sometimes to grow.
Yeah. Well, and I've said this before, I think here on the podcast, is one of my favorite things about becoming an atheist is how often I say that I was wrong. Because when I was religious, being right was so important. Being correct was so important. Being like resolute in my beliefs was my whole thing. And if anybody tried to even ask a question or poke a hole in a certain story, it was like, no, that's the devil. I can't have anything to do with this person. That's awful. I know that I'm right. But when you take away all of the performative worship type stuff that comes with religion, and when you're just a person who's just looking for stuff that you hope is true and just doing research and learning, it's amazing how often you get to go, oh shit, my bad. I was wrong about that.
Yeah.
And you don't die, and you don't get struck by lightning, and you don't get ostracized from your community or anything like that. Yeah. And you learn so much more.
If you're able, look, that's one thing, being married. If you're like, if you're the kind of person that you're able to go, you know what, fair enough, I was wrong. Yeah. I got no problem telling people I don't have that ego of I just don't have that. I'm glad. I don't know why. I just don't have that, where it's like, no, I got to try to prove I'm right when I'm wrong. I'm not going to do that shit. I'm wrong. Right. I can, but that, like I say, that whole group thing, that group mentality of, and like you say, you can't ask any questions because they tell you, well, you want to keep the negativity out. You don't even let the negativity in. It's like, it's not negativity though. It's questions that are going to help you grow as a person one way or the other. It's like, and it goes on in every facet of, like, now, in society, like the transgender thing, it's like, no questions asked. This is the way it is. And you're like, can't even ask a question about it. Maybe people are really trying to figure out what's going on and what's this, what's that. Not everybody's trying to point a finger and say, you're stupid, or you're what you believe is bullshit. It's like, no, maybe people want to know. I want to see what, I don't like talking to only people that have my opinions. I want to hear somebody say something crazy and then be like, that's very interesting. It's a very compelling point of view, because like I said, I don't care. I don't care about right and wrong and all that. I'm just fascinated with a lot of stuff, and that's what it is, but don't bully me in any way of, you have to say that, you have to believe that. No, I don't. I just have to pay taxes. It's the only thing I have to do.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like I don't have any obligation to anybody else.
Yeah. And after a certain point, if you don't pay taxes, you get free room and board, you get free food, you get.
I know. That's my plan B. If my wife dies before me, I'm just going to quit paying taxes. I'm just going to end up in in jail, and I'll be a part of the system. They can take care of me.
There you go. And to your point earlier,
that's a terrible plan.
No, the point you were talking about with like transgender and things like social changes and social rules and things. I think people fear what they don't understand. I think people fear, like, they fear ideas, they fear races, they fear religions, they fear cultures, they fear ideologies. For example, I have lived in Tennessee, but I have also lived in Chicago. And people who have never held a gun in their entire life are more afraid of guns than anyone else because they don't know how it works.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and I remember when like gun debates were first coming up and I was still living in Chicago, I was telling people, I think the unknown scares people. And when I was a kid, I grew up around guns and I was more afraid of what my stepdad was going to do to me if I played with the gun than I was of the gun.
Yeah.
Right? Like
never wanted to play with it. Yeah.
Right. And so I think asking questions is very important. Like, I will never know what it's like to be a transgender person. I have no idea. The best that I can do is ask the questions that come to mind. And luckily, I'm a person who has people I can go to who aren't going to like be upset that I'm asking them personal questions like that. But not everyone has that. You know, people who are at church and they're questioning things, they don't have anyone outside of the church to go to ask questions to. They don't have anybody who at least will admit that they're questioning their faith, they're questioning their beliefs. They don't really know what's true or not. And so I said all that to say, I'm glad to have people and like conversations like this, like the one we're having, because you seem very even keeled. You seem like you just mind your business. But that just goes to show that even people who seem as comfortable in their own skin as you are have questions and concerns and things that still confuse you and perplex you and that you don't want to take necessarily a stance on because you don't feel like you know enough about it. And I think that's important for people to see, because I think a lot of times people will see people like you or people like me, people who walk around seemingly pretty confident, and they think, I wish I didn't have questions or confusion. I wish I got it. I wish I understood more. And we don't know what the fuck's going on either. You know what I mean?
That's the thing. And I'm like, I saw an example of that today where I saw something. I just saw a picture, a still picture of someone. I'm like, God, they look like they're having a good, they look like they're confident. It looks like a great, like that person could go home and kill themselves. You know, I mean, hopefully they don't, but that's a very real reality of like, you don't know, like, don't put too much stock in what you see, especially online where, oh, I need to look like this person. No, this person has paid a lot of money to look like this. Don't worry about it. You're fine. You know, or maybe I could do, you know, but if I had a buddy tell me one time when I was a kid, actually, when he said that you can't learn anything if you know everything. So if you
say that one more time,
you know,
sorry, you broke up there for 1 second. Sorry, you broke up for 1 second. He said what to you?
Oh, he said, you know, you can't. He said you can't learn anything if you know everything. It's hard to learn something when you know everything. Is the way he put it, and that's true. Like, be a sponge. Like, ask questions. You know, ask people questions if you're confused on something, and be wary also of people that have a quick solution to a big problem. You know what I mean? Like, people go, you know how to take care of homelessness? No, I don't. And no, you don't either. It's not just one thing. Like, you can't just be like, well, you just got to do this. That's a huge problem. Like, you're not going to solve it like that. You know, so be wary of people that just act like they have all the answers, because people can be confident and make you think, oh, well, that's sure. They're confident. They're successful. No, like study it. If you're interested in it, study it.
That's a really good point. I'm writing that down right now so I remember. That's a great point. Like being wary of people who have quick fixes for complicated, multifaceted problems.
If it doesn't make sense, if it doesn't make sense, there's only two reasons that things don't make sense, at least to me. I didn't understand it, or you didn't explain it right. So that's the only, like, form an opinion. Think about what you are thinking about and be like, well, what's my opinion on this?
Yeah.
It might surprise you what your real opinion on things are. I've been surprised many times.
Yeah. I tell people all the time, I was in debate and we wouldn't get to pick what side of the argument we were going to be on. We'd be assigned the topic and we'd be and I learned so much about myself by being forced to defend the side I thought was the opposite of my side.
Yeah.
And then I would start reading and I would start Googling and I'm like, oh, wait, this sounds actually pretty reasonable. Wait a second. Like this sounds like I can get behind this. Wait a second. And then the next thing you know, it turns out you're totally different than you thought you were, because before you were so busy defending who you thought you weren't paying attention. You weren't learning anything.
Well, I wanted to ask you too, because you being a comedian, and I don't know if, and this is just the way that I look at things, or I try to see both sides, because again, the whole I don't have a dog in the fight type thing. I'm interested. I want to see from both sides. Like I want to see the pros and the cons, and whatever, to me, whatever stance is the funniest, I'm drawn to that. Where it's like, it may not even be something that I necessarily believe, but it's like, that's pretty interesting. That's an interesting way to look at it. There's, so is that the way that you kind of, would work or would write, or would, like, you, for instance, like, I don't say you had a subject you like, I'm going to look at all the pros and I'm going to look at all the cons and then kind of try to sprinkle that in together.
Yeah. In my mind, I've always thought that one of the best ways to structure like a set or a bit is to identify a problem that you have, whether it's like casual, like a hill you'll die on, or whether it's common, like a political opinion, and then identify the solution and make sure the solution is worse than the original problem. Like, those medicine commercials where like the medicine's for headaches, but the side effects are like diarrhea, heart attacks, death.
Yeah.
So I love like vehemently defending a problem that I have with a social idea, with a group. Like I'm going to stand up here and tell you guys with my whole chest how I feel about this problem and why it's a problem, but I'm going to solve that problem. And then the solution I have is like even worse, and it makes me look ridiculous,
That's fine. Yeah, I like that. That's awesome.
Because lots of comedians like to rant, but I think it's even funnier when they come up with a quote unquote solution to the problem they're complaining about. Well, Kyle, this has been a really fantastic conversation. I've really enjoyed just getting to chat with you, getting to hear your story, getting to just kind of hear your thoughts and opinions and your views on the world. And for anybody listening, if you have any questions for Kyle, or if you have any comments or observations, please feel free to email me. My contact is in the description of any platform that you're watching or listening on. And I'll send those to Kyle, and I'll make sure Kyle sees those.
Yeah, absolutely.
So send them our way. And then Kyle, any parting words for anybody who might be listening? Any thoughts, ideas, opinions?
Just don't take it too seriously. Just don't. That's the only thing I can say. My wife will get mad at me for saying that, but I just don't take life too seriously. You don't make it out at the end. So just try to be nice and be cool with people, even if they have a difference of opinion. And if you can't, then just stay away from them. That's what I do. I eliminate all the drama out of life.
Yeah, I just stay away from everybody. I just don't talk to people. It's easier that way.
Introvert. I stay in. Y'all can have it. I don't give a shit.